In this episode, I'm going to talk about 3 common challenges to theism in general or Christianity in specific. The first is that there's no proof for God. Second is that science has disproved God or religion. And the third is that the Bible isn't credible. I've worked on staff in my church for going on 12 years. And so these are some of the most common questions that people have or challenges that come against me personally or people that I talk to when it comes to belief in God in general or Christianity specifically. So the first is that there's no proof for God. And usually what people mean by this is that there's no evidence. But if they are actually saying there's zero proof for God, well, I would ask what they mean by that. If you mean there is nothing that 100% proves God's existence, I agree with you. There's nothing that 100% proves God's existence. There's also nothing that 100% proves that the world is only material. So we're making an assumption on either one of those, but I think that if you're talking about evidence, well, to say that there's no evidence for God is actually just not true. It's wrong. And I would say that not only is there evidence, but that the evidence actually points to God or to the reality of metaphysical truth or metaphysical reality in general, to theism as it gets a little bit more specific, and in my opinion, my belief in the Christian God specifically. And so one thing I'm going to do in this is I'm going to just point out a resource for you, because I think it's a lot easier to make a big claim and then to never back it up than it is to actually do some research. And so there's a book called The Language of God by Francis Collins, and it's A Scientist Presents Evidence for Belief. And Francis Collins, he's a physician geneticist. He led the Human Genome Project. He's the former president of the National Institute of Health. He is a doctor. He's a scientist. And so he wrote this book, A Scientist Presents Evidence for Belief. And now this isn't like the one thing that's going to prove it for you, but it is interesting to me that he is a scientist. He started off as an atheist. He came to belief later in Christianity, and he's giving what he believes are evidence for belief. And so to the statement, there is no evidence, there is. You might not believe it. It might not be enough evidence for you, but there is. And if you're a believer, well, there's something for you. There's more evidence maybe out there. When people challenge you, there's evidence. Second thing, science has disproved God or religion. Again, I would just say it's not true. It's a really bold statement that people make, but it's just not true. And the truth is, I actually saw this on TikTok the other day. There was a guy who he is a scientist, and he wasn't arguing for God, but he just said, scientist doesn't tell us whether or not there is a God. Scientist just tells us how the universe operates. It doesn't tell us anything beyond that. And if we're trying to take it beyond that, we're taking it beyond its scope. And I just like that, because I think it's about the most honest approach that you can take. Just like I don't think that the Bible is trying to teach us science, right? Like holy writings aren't teaching us science. They're teaching us about the nature of man, our nature. They're not teaching us how the universe operates scientifically. But they can. The two things can work together, which is what kind of my point is. Many people see a science, which is right an observation of the natural world around us, how it operates, and religion, metaphysics, whatever you want to call it. Those two things, which that right is the study of like the unseen things, right? It's human nature, ethics, morality, those things. These things work together to give us a holistic view of the universe that we live in and how we should operate in it. Separated, they're not doing both of those things. It's either the universe we live in or how we should operate, or, moral ethics, whatever within it. And so actually, as they come together, we get a more full picture. And so again, just one resource that I have, it's a book. It's called When Science Meets Religion by Barbour. And it's the subtitle is Enemies, Strangers, or Partners. And so he just kind of goes through this idea that science and religion are at odds. And he talks about how that's not so much the case. And so again, it's easier to make big claims. It takes a little bit more work to look at some resources and see what other people are thinking. But whether you're a believer that somebody has challenged, or you're a non-believer who is the one doing the challenging, that's just one. There's plenty of other resources out there, but that's just one. And then the third thing, which this is one that happens all the time, is the Bible isn't credible. And this can come in all sorts of different varieties of this. But for me, this is where it starts to come to my belief specifically in Christianity. Christianity is based on Christ, so it's based on the Gospels. And the truth is that scholarship is out there on the veracity, the historicity of the Gospels. And one book, so this one, it's going to be a little bit beefier. This is called Jesus and the Eyewitnesses. The Gospels is Eyewitness Testimony. This is a little bit thicker of a book. It's a textbook. The author, Richard Bauckham, he's talking about how the Gospels contain eyewitness testimony of Jesus's life, right? But not only that the early audience who heard these, who first came in contact with the Gospels, they would have recognized it as eyewitness testimony. And not only that, but that they've actually been around long enough that there would have been people who were eyewitnesses during the time period who would have still been able to say, no, you're lying, if they were in fact lying. There are like extra biblical sources in here. So if maybe that's not the right term, sources from outside of the Bible, different cultural sources in here. As well, historical sources and everything. So this is a time commitment if you're going to get into this. But the point is that to say the Bible isn't credible, well, the Gospels contain eyewitness testimony, and that's the argument here. And what is more credible than eyewitness testimony? And so the whole point of this video is really just that these are things that I hear all the time. And so if you're a believer, maybe these are things that you could look at, read. They're going to maybe give you some foundation that maybe you've never studied before, give you an answer when people ask you, or just help you to be more sure of yourself. If you're a non-believer, well, maybe these are some things that you can look at for, when you challenge somebody. Well, hey, these are some things that you can pick through, and maybe they'll give you more ammunition against somebody so that you can prove them wrong, right? But maybe they'll also open your eyes that maybe it's not as clear-cut as you thought. Maybe there's more going on than just the physical, material world that we observe physically. Maybe there's a reason that things like morality and, beauty and all of those things actually tug at our heartstrings, and maybe there's more going on than what we see. So hey, that's it for today. If you like this kind of content, man, do me a favor, subscribe, like, share, comment. If you don't like this and you think I'm an idiot, that's fine too. You can subscribe, like, share, comment. And hey, that's it for this time. We will see you guys next time.